Good evening and welcome to Soulful Sundown. I'm the Reverend Jennifer Brower, and on behalf of my colleagues on the ministry team and the members of the Unitarian Universalist congregation at Shelter Rock, I welcome you to our service in my living room. Oh, how I look forward to our being back together on the property at the Unitarian Universalist congregation at Shelter Rock, back there in the social hall with all of you and our band and the wonderful guys of Penny Lane who do all of our AV stuff and the staff at Shelter Rock. But we can't do that yet. So, as some of you have been asking, we are hoping to do that live in person on the property in April. So we shall see. Meantime, we will meet here on Facebook Live from our homes or our cars or wherever it is we happen to be. Know that the musicians of the Cosmic Orchestra and I are delighted that you've chosen to be here with us tonight or whenever you're tuning in if you're not here with us while we are live. Your presence here does most certainly matter to us, and I hope that you will use the chat function and check in with us so that we can check back in with you, that we can all be here together creating the warm, vibrant, soulful sundown community that we have so thoroughly enjoyed in person over these many years. It is certainly not the same as being together, but it is very nice to be with you. Alrighty, folks, let's see. I have one announcement before we plow ahead, and that is about our Soulful Salutations, which I hope you've been coming to. Soulful Salutations, our gentle yoga program set to live music, has really grown out of Soulful Sundown. It's offered by Ben Wish and Denise DeLuca. The next session is February 25th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on Zoom. It's not live, it's on Zoom. Everything's on Zoom. And there is no charge to participate. You may extend this invitation to attend Soulful Salutations to everybody in your circle of kinship and friendship. Invite them to be with you in participating in Soulful Salutations. It's good for the body, it's good for the spirit, it's good for you, it's good for them. And we want to give this to you to help you through these still difficult and stressful days. So check out our congregation's website, which is uucsr.org, and look for the featured events tab, and that will take you to the Zoom link for Soulful Salutations. There are probably other ways to get there, but I don't know what they are. So I hope you will try that. So remember, February 25th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on Zoom with Ben Wish and Denise DeLuca. And now, friends, I would love for us to welcome, to greet, to say hi to the members of the Cosmic Orchestra, without whom this wouldn't work so well. They are Pat Falco and Erica Lee and Jonathan Predis and Eugene Ruffalo and Mark Schulman and Ben Wish and Chris Marshak, our band leader. We turn now to lighting our chalice, the symbol of Unitarian Universalism. Tonight we light this chalice to give thanks for this time together, and with hope that we will soon be together in person again. For those hopes, and for those that are held in each of our hearts, those held in the private sanctuary of each heart, we've kindled this chalice flame. Recently, something happened that struck a chord within me, a deep, resonant, emotionally complex chord with notes of sorrow and yearning and pain. It was the sound of existential terror. Although not the first time in my life that chord has been struck, it was deafeningly loud this time. I was washed over by the reality of our unique aloneness as individuals, washed over by the reality of our existential isolation. To co-opt and reuse an artful phrase coined by a musician companion. This chord that I was struck by, was an expensive chord, deeply layered and attention-holding and worthy of due contemplation. Well, I honestly don't think my heightened awareness of the existential loneliness of humankind was induced by the approach of Valentine's Day, which some of you know all too well that I have a long-standing negative feeling about. I can't say for sure that there isn't a connection. As I have sat with my thoughts, Plato's Symposium, in which Aristophanes offers a fantastical account of the origins of love, has come to mind. The story describes how we are each half of a more complex creature that yearns to be rejoined. Aristophanes says, love is born into every human being. It is what calls the separated halves of our original nature back together. It tries to make one out of two and heal the wound of humankind. Although I do not believe there is one person we are meant to love, and I do not believe in the search for one's solitary soulmate, I do believe that within each of us there is an innate longing for connection. And I know that isolation is too common a source of profound human suffering. In fact, social deprivation has negative effects on the lives of all social animals, not just humans. Sitting on the desktop of my computer for years now, because I'm fascinated by it, is a scientific study of the social lives of carpenter ants. That study found that when forced to live in isolation, the carpenter ant was unable to digest its food properly. The ants that were isolated walked themselves to an early death. They didn't know what to do with themselves, so they walked and they walked and they walked aimlessly until they died. It was found that the isolated ants lived only 6 days on average, whereas group-dwelling carpenter ants lived up to 10 times as long, living 66 days. Isolation for social creatures can be fatal.
I want to live all alone in the desert. I want to be like Georgia O'Keeffe. I want to live on the Upper East Side and never go down in the street. Splendid isolation, I don't need no one. Splendid isolation. Jackson and Disneyland. Don't want to share it with nobody else. Lock the gates, Goofy, take my hand and lead me through the world of self. Splendid isolation, I don't need no one. Splendid isolation. Don't wanna wake up with no one beside me. Don't wanna take up with nobody new. Don't want nobody coming by without calling first. Don't want nothing to do with you. putting tinfoil up on the windows, lying down in the dark to dream. I don't want to see their faces, I don't want to hear them scream. Splendid isolation, I don't need no one. Splendid isolation, splendid isolation, I don't need no one, don't need no one. Splendid isolation, splendid isolation, I don't need no one, no, no. Splendid isolation, splendid isolation, I don't need no one.
Before March 2020, there were days when every single one of us wanted space. When we wanted to be left alone. When we wanted to stay home, far away from the interests and needs, foibles and flaws of other human beings. Because really, sometimes other human beings are hard to be with. But in these last 2 years, when we were first forced to our separate domiciles, and since then have had to keep our distance from one another, we have felt the steady and increasingly heavy weight of our isolation. Now, I know there were some among us in those early days of the pandemic who had to be home with many more people than they might have chosen and who would have been glad for a little more space. But we know that it's neither splendid nor healthy for human beings, for relational creatures, to be cut off from one another. I share with you now a favorite illustrative story by the Reverend David Bumbaugh, The Back Scratcher. The fall from grace, the great disruption of the primordial order, the original sin, had nothing to do with eating apples or talking to snakes. The instrument of our downfall was a wooden back scratcher, that piece of wood bent at the end so one can reach the unreachable spot, there between the shoulder blades. Down a little bit, now up a little bit, there where the most persistent itch always takes up residence. Before the back scratcher, before that simple infernal device, we, like all our primate kin, depended on others to do for us what we could not do for ourselves. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Before the back scratcher, before that simple infernal tool, we needed each other to scratch the unreachable place. The wooden back scratcher dissolved the bonds of reciprocity, unloosed the ties of community, and tempted us to believe in our own godlike self-sufficiency. And God walked into the cool of the garden and saw the primate standing alone. "What has happened?" God asked. "What has happened that you stand alone?" "I have found a back scratcher," said the beast, "and now I need no one." "Oh, poor beast," said God. "Now you must leave this garden. In Eden, no one stands alone. Each depends on the others." And thus began our wandering, our pacing up and down the earth, scratching our own itches, pretending self-sufficiency, trying to ignore the persistent sense of loss, the vague yearning for a primordial order, a world where you scratched my back and I scratched yours. A wooden back scratcher is a poor replacement for the gentle touch of living, loving hands. We need in our lives the presence and touch and help of others. We need in our world the interconnection of the human community. We need affection and love. We need the sound of voices beyond just our own.
This is the sound of one voice, one spirit, one voice, the sound of one who makes a choice. This is the sound of one voice. This is the sound of one voice. This is the sound of voices too. The sound of me singing with you, helping each other to make it through. This is the sound of voices too. This is the sound of voices too. This is the sound of voices three, singing together in harmony, surrendering to the mystery. This is the sound of voices three. This is the sound of voices three. And this is the sound of all of us, singing with love and the will to trust. Leave the rest behind, it'll turn to dust. This is the sound of all of us. This is the sound of all of us. This is the sound of one voice, one people, one voice, a song for every one of us. This is the sound of one voice. This is the sound of one voice. One voice.
Just like the Valentine's stuffed candy aisle of CVS. You all know how I love my CVS. But just like CVS, in the religious community, there is lots of talk of love. Unlike the drugstore hawking cards and heart-shaped candy boxes, the religious community isn't usually talking about romantic love or eros, although that too is part of one's spiritual life. The love talk heard in halls of worship is the admonition to love one another, or is held in the statement that God is love, or the newer slogan seen on colorful signs, Love is our religion. And it sounds good, and maybe even great. And it sounds right. And really, who's going to argue against love? And like the words of Aristophanes on romantic love, it is poetic. But what is love in the religious community, really? What do we mean when we say love is our religion? With the word religion coming from the Latin meaning to bind together, love then is that which binds us together. And yet, what is love? What is that love? Although not the desire for romantic or sexual partnership, love in the religious community stems from the same need for connection, the same need to get back to the primordial place, to David Bumbaugh's description of Eden, where we know ourselves to be interdependent and interconnected and mutually supportive beasts. The Reverend Dr. Carter Hayward, writing on love in the religious community, said this, that love, like truth and beauty, is concrete. Love is not fundamentally a sweet feeling, not at heart a matter of sentiment. Love is active, effective, a matter of making reciprocal and mutually beneficial relations with one's friends and enemies. Love is a choice, not simply or necessarily a rational choice, but rather a willingness to be present to others without pretense or guile. Love is a conversion to humanity, a willingness to participate with others in the healing of a broken world and the healing of broken lives. There is a lot to unpack there. And like love between two human beings, love of the world as religious people is complicated. The love that binds us together in religious community, the love that we say we want to make manifest in the world, makes demands on us. It forces us to confront ourselves and our biases and to ask, who do we love really? Who are we comfortable loving? Who are we willing to love? Can we dislike a person's actions or philosophy and still love them as a child of creation? Can I love the homeless guy who hassles me and everybody else on the subway? Can I love the folks who don't feel as I do about COVID vaccination and mask wearing, or any number of things about which we might have deeply held beliefs and disagree? It's so much easier to narrow the list of people to love to just a handful, and to build walls to set ourselves apart from others who share the human experience. And yet, when we do that, love is not our religion. And when we do that, we resist our natural interdependence and we feel our disconnection. We feel the weight of our isolation. We don't know our place in the human community and we wander. When we talk about love in the religious community, we're saying that our work, our secular and our sacred work, of each of us in the human family, is to relearn and honor our fundamental connection. It's to go back to the days before that back scratcher, to learn to love one another in an effort to fight the hollowness and rootlessness of isolation, which is a slow and sure death for each of us. Our work is to remind one another of our original nature, of being in community, of belonging to each other. The healing of the world comes through our efforts to look out for and to help mend one another. As we prepare to bring our time together to a close, I share with you a story by an unknown author. There was a scientist once who lived worried about the problems of the world. Not hard to imagine. She dedicated her life to finding ways in which these problems could be solved. She spent days and nights in the lab searching for answers with no results. One day at home, her 7-year-old invaded her workspace and set upon her, wanting to help with the task. The scientist, distressed about the interruption, asked the child to go play outside, and seeing that it was just impossible after a little while to get the child out, the scientist mom thought of something for the kid to do. She grabbed a magazine and she flipped through the pages until she landed on a map of the world. How perfect is this? A map of the world. And with scissors, she cut the map into pieces, like a jigsaw puzzle. She took some tape and she handed it both to the child. And she said, "Since I know how much you like jigsaw puzzles, I'm going to give you the world. It's all cut into pieces and you can go and repair it and put it back together. While you do that, I'll work on repairing the world in my way." The scientist's mom thought it would take hours for the kid to put these pieces back together. But it didn't happen that way. A short time later, the mom heard the child's voice. Mom, I finished repairing the world." At first, the mom didn't believe it. Like, really? You can't give me 5 minutes? And she went and looked and saw that the map was perfectly reassembled with all of the pieces in the right places. "How did you do it?" she said. "How did you put the whole world back together so well, so quickly?" And the child answered, "I didn't know one country from another. I didn't know the shapes of the oceans. But I noticed that on the other side, there was a picture of a person. So I turned each little piece and started to repair the person. When I was able to repair the person, I turned it back over to the other side and saw that I had repaired the world." May we do likewise. And may those around us help us to heal too. So may it be. Good night, friends.
1, 2, 3. I'm a living sunset, lightning in my bones. Push me to the edge, but my will is stone. 'Cause I believe in a better way. Fools will be fools and wise will be wise. But I will look this world straight in the eyes. And I believe in a better way. Yes, I believe in a better way. What good is a man who won't take a stand? What good is a cynic with no better plan? I believe in a better way. Yes, I believe in a better way. Words feel pleasant as they rest upon your ears. I hope these words feel pleasant as they rest upon your ear, upon your ear. Reality is sharp and it cuts me like a knife. And everyone I know is in the fight of their life. And I believe in a better way. Take your face out of your hands and clear your eyes. You have a right to your dreams and don't be denied. And I believe in a better way. And I believe in a better way. And I believe in a better way. Yeah, I believe in a better way.